Hey there guys, it's OCB Communications and welcome back to another review, this time of the 2005 film Fantastic Four. Now this is a film that I never really been the biggest fan of anyway. Even as a kid when I rented it, it was just meh. I don't even think I even saw it in the theater. And that's mainly because the Fantastic Four comics, I didn't really read that much of them. The closest I really read is the Ultimate Visual Guide. So that's about as close as I get to really knowing anything about the Fantastic Four. So, but I definitely would say I like this more than the 1994 unreleased film, but I definitely don't think it was that fun, fast, or fantastic. And I definitely don't agree with this review by the Chicago Tribune. Spectacular, astonishing, stunning. I don't think there's anything spectacular, astonishing, or stunning about this film. Uh, really. Maybe the performance by Michael Chiklis, but that's about it for me personally. Um, Mainly, I just thought that this film was just, at the end of the day, it was passable. It was passable, decent entertainment. It wasn't anything that was egregiously awful. It wasn't anything I'm like, oh my God, I want to pour acid in my eyes. It wasn't anything that bad. I don't think it's as bad as the Rotten Tomatoes rating suggests it is, which is like a 27%. I don't think it's that awful. I would even give it probably a little bit of a higher rating. Well, I don't know. The 5.7 on IMDb, I think is pretty. I'm okay with that for this movie. Um, Mainly, I just felt that it wasn't really that. There wasn't really a lot of action. Mainly because the director doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to action. Because of Tim Story, the director of the Barbershop films, and I guess the only reason why Fox gave him this job is because they were impressed with, believe it or not, the the cut of Taxi they saw. They saw Taxi, the film he directed starring Queen Latifah and Jimmy Fallon, a movie that nobody remembers. Not anybody. It wasn't very impressive in the box office. It wasn't impressive critically. They thought it was impressive for some reason, the Fox execs, so they gave the job of Fantastic Four to Tim Story because they liked what they saw in Taxi. So it shows you that Fox was 20th century fuckface long before they did stuff with the new Fantastic Four. They were doing stupid shit when 2004, 2005, when this film was in production, because they gave the job of directing to Tim Story because they were impressed with what they saw from Taxi, which is a really shitty movie. I wouldn't say this is as shitty as Taxi, but I still think that Tim Story was just a wrong choice for this. I know Chris Columbus was involved in writing some scripts that were not ended up not being made for Constantine films uh, and for Fox, I think. And be honest, I would have been more for Chris Columbus directing it than Tim Story, because even when it comes to comedy, he's not very good. So anyway, because I admit it, I haven't seen. I think I saw Barbershop once, but I didn't really care for it that much. It's not really my type of movie. Tim Story's really not one of my favorite directors. And I just don't think he was right for this film. But there are some moments where I don't mind. I like the moment on the bridge where the Thing shows up, tries to stop this guy from killing himself. I like the moment he saves him from getting hit by a semi, and I like how it's a real truck that gets crumpled in and crashes. I like that. I like that the whole bridge sequence, everything is done with as much practical effects as possible. There's a real fire truck that falls over the side of the bridge. In fact, I think that sequence was more suspenseful than anything in Terminator Genesis, with the school bus and the bridge and everything. Here I thought was much better and a lot better. It was definitely more well done. Um, so anyway, so you have the bridge sequence I didn't mind, and then you have the sequence that's where they end up being dubbed the Fantastic Four by the press, where you get Mr. Fantastic shows a little bit of his power, saves a guy, a fireman falling into the water. Chris Evans, the Human Torch, he saves a girl from getting burned by absorbing the flames, and Sue Storm holds back some of the explosion with her powers, with her she creates like a shield. And so yeah, so I didn't mind that sequence, and I didn't mind some of the action bits at the end with Doom versus the Thing. So I didn't mind that little bits here and there, but for the most part, there really wasn't much. It was a lot of build up, a lot of backstory. You have a little bit of the whole thing with the cosmic energy, how they get their powers on the space station in the beginning. But I really wouldn't call that an action sequence, but it was decent. And then you have the whole stuff where Johnny Storm would do stuff like he'd go on and he'd do the snowboarding, and then he'd do the BMX biking because he's so cool and he's extreme, which I didn't really care for that. It just felt like the film was just trying too hard to make Johnny Storm the cool guy of the group. So, and Chris Evans was okay. At points, I thought his character was kind of a douchebag, but I did wish that the Thing would have punched him in the face. That's when that scene where they're feuding a little bit. But that's the point. But I never remember the few comics that I have read Johnny Storm being that much of an annoying douchebag. But for the most part, he was having fun with the role, so I like that. And Chris Evans was definitely better than Jay Underwood. Um, and it was definitely a shock though to see Chris Evans play this role because I'm so used to him as Captain America, and watching this reminded me why I had my doubts of him playing a good Cap, because I was like, the Human Torch, Johnny Storm, I don't know. I don't know if that's the right casting choice. The guy who thinks he's hot shit and he's gonna get all the chicks, all the hot chicks, but he proved me wrong. The rest of the cast, I thought did all right. Michael Chiklis is the standout for me, though. I thought he did an amazing job. It was a really good performance. I thought he embodied the characters of Ben Grimm and the Thing perfectly. It's a very solid performance. The makeup effects on the Thing were they were there. Um, they did look like orange scales. They didn't really look like orange rocks or anything, but I didn't mind them at the end of the day because it enabled Michael Chiklis to actually be the Thing and actually show real emotions behind the the rubber and the latex, and it enabled a great actor to deliver a great performance. And actually, with his eyes and everything. So, and it was the first time you were able to see the Thing have a living, breathing person behind it. Because before, in the 1994 film, it was just stuntman Carl Ciafarlo trying to do the best he can to mime the actions of Michael Bailey Smith, but at the same time he can't really emote very well because the head is pretty much just an animatronic head. But here, it's not animatronics, and it enables the actor to move inside the suit and emote and do a really good job with that. I thought Ioan Gruffudd was passable as Mr. Fantastic. It wasn't anything fantastic, but it wasn't anything that was really egregiously terrible or anything like that. I also like Kerry Washington as Alicia Masters. I thought she did a good job. I liked her performance. And there were and mostly my favorite scenes in the film involved the Thing. I really, there were scenes that really hit me emotionally, hit me in the heart, where he comes back after he's been changed to his home, and there's even a welcome home banner on the window. He calls his wife up to come out and meet him, tells him it's going to be a bit of a shock. Remember what we said when we got married in sickness and in health? We'd be together no matter what. This is one of those times. He shows her what he is now. She runs away. And you really felt for Ben a lot in this film. And that in large part is due to the performance by Michael Chiklis. And then the scene after he helps people on the bridge, and after the press, start talking to him and everything, he sees his wife in the crowd. She takes her wedding ring off, and she sets it on the ground and then walks off. And that was a really tragic scene. It really felt for Ben. And then I like this moment where Reed picks up the ring because Ben can't pick it up because his fingers are too big. And Reed picks it up and puts it in the palm of his hand and then closes it. And that was a really good moment that shows established the fact that Ben and Reed Richards are really great friends, so much so that they're the closest thing to family that Ben probably has right now. The closest thing he has to family is Reed. And that definitely did show in that sequence. And I like that. And I did like the witty banter that they had early in the film, between Reed and Ben. They definitely did have chemistry. And I didn't mind the little witty back and forth, that repertoire that Ben had with Johnny. So there was some good stuff with that as well. Pretty much every really good scene in this movie involved Michael Chiklis for me. As for the rest of the performances, I really thought were kind of lame and not very good, especially Jessica Alba. I admit, she's hotter than hell in this movie. The scene where she's just in her bra and panties. Yes, I admit I paused that when I was younger, along with a lot of other men who paused the fuck out of that scene or screen grabbed it. I know, yes, Jessica Alba is at the peak of her hotness in this movie, but she's still not a good actress. She can't emote very well. That really makes the relationship between her and Reed suffer. Just doesn't. I don't feel anything with that relationship. It doesn't feel genuine, and her performance is just it's pretty bad, to be honest. The whole scene where she's with Doom and Doom's like, Susan, let's not fight. No, let's. It was a pretty bad line delivery. Um, I sum up Jessica Alba's performance like this. She's a walking, talking, living, breathing Bratz doll. She looks like one, and she acts about as well as a Bratz doll would too. And that is without barely any emotion. Very stiff, very doll-like. It sums it up really well. If a Bratz doll was real and it could talk, it's Jessica Alba as the Invisible Woman, Susan Storm in this movie. And I also did not care for Julian McMahon as Doctor Doom. Mainly because the screenplay didn't give him that much to work with, because he was pretty much Norman Osborn II. Because this movie came out, I think it was the first Marvel superhero film of the next two, I think came out after Spider-Man. So this was it was trying to ride the wave of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and it showed. It takes place in New York. You have the same sort of villain. Doctor Doom is pretty much just Green Goblin, just with a new look. Because Julian McMahon just plays the same sort of thing. He's a rich, powerful guy. He goes into space, helps Reed with his experiment to try to figure out the human genome. Something goes wrong. He gets exposed to the cosmic rays along with the rest of the crew, and he spends most of the film brooding. And then then he realizes that his stock has crashed, and now his investors are leaving him, and now he's pissed. He realizes he has powers now, and he kills one of the investors. And the scene I didn't mind because it was pretty brutal. He blew a hole through his chest. It's actually a pretty decent effect. And then he becomes Doctor Doom in the end because he just wants to kill the Fantastic Four, but get revenge. That's really about it. And his motivation isn't that much either. It's just, I'm mad, I lost my money, and I want to kill the Fantastic Four. Mainly because they did this to me, I don't know, even though I could fix it, because I end up fixing Ben, because Reed worked on this machine to try to get the cosmic energy to reverse the effects, and he just doesn't have enough power because he tested on himself and it messes him up, and pretty bad CGI phase of his face melting. But then the Doctor Doom finds out and he wants to get rid of Ben, who's Reed's bodyguard, and he's the tough guy. He's the only really strong person in the group. So he changes him back to normal, and he uses his energy powers to make the energy levels go back up, to go up past the limit, so it can cure Ben. But he doesn't think about, maybe I could cure myself, but it doesn't matter because Doctor Doom in this is just not a very well developed character. And the only reason why he even wears a mask is because the mask was given to him as a gift from Latveria. So I guess if you do good things for the country of Latveria, you get some weird ass gifts, like a creepy looking mask. So anyway, so yeah. And I didn't care for Julian McMahon. I thought his performance at best was average, and his acting he was a poor man's Kevin Spacey, right down to the mannerisms and the line delivery. And I like Kevin Spacey, but he's just not a good fit for Doom. Doom's supposed to have this imposing, deep, booming voice, and to hear Julian McMahon's voice, this Beverly Hills surgeon from Nip Tuck voice coming out of Doom's mask was just didn't work. It was a really bad disconnect for me. And so when he puts on the mask and he's Doom at the end, it just doesn't work. Especially in the scene where he's with Susan and he just says this fucking lame ass line. Where he's like, Marco Polo. I was like, oh god, that is cringe-inducingly awful. That was lame as fuck. And so yeah, Doom just wasn't that intimidating in this. He wasn't that. I just didn't buy Julian McMahon's performance. I just thought it was just, at best, it was average. At worst, it was just completely forgettable. And Doom should be a lot more than that. Did I think it was better than Doom from Jazz Hands of Death Doom from the 1994 film? Yeah, but that's not saying much. That really isn't. So anyway, yeah, I didn't care for Julian McMahon as Doom, so that definitely hurt the film because the villain was lame. And also, other than a little bit of the action with the Thing and Doom when they're punching each other, they fall out of a building into a pool. There's a little bit of some fisticuffs on the streets. They beat him too easily. They just end up using their powers together. They end up having Johnny go supernova, heat him up really, really hot. Then the Thing breaks open a water hydrant and cools him off. And Reed's like, science lesson, uh, Doom. What happens when you superheat something that's really, superheat metal and then cool it off? And then what happens is he ends up getting frozen solid, and then they end up putting him in cryostasis. Of course, his eyes open, so then that's a setup for the sequel. So yeah, I mean, so that's really all that there was there. I mean, Doom used a little bit of his electricity powers, a little bit of some fisticuffs between him and the Thing. Johnny Storm does a little bit. He chases Doom away, he chases a missile away, yeah, and then yeah, it's really not much. I mean, Reed gets stopped. I mean, it gets frozen, and Sue gets knocked out. It's just really not much of anything in terms of a climax. It's actually uh, pretty disappointing, to be honest, in terms of a climax. But I will say this, the film's not boring. I was never bored by the film. We got 47 minutes in and I was still interested, and it was decent entertainment. So I would definitely say this is a time waster for me. The extended cut doesn't really add that much. It adds like a couple scenes with Ben and Alicia, builds up the relationship some more, and I didn't mind that. But then it adds some stuff that, like, Johnny is a hothead and he's not as good with girls as he thinks he is. More stuff with Reed and Sue, which doesn't work for me because there's no chemistry between the two actors. I don't think Ioan Gruffudd and Jessica Alba have any chemistry because Ioan Gruffudd's performance is there. It's decent, and Jessica Alba's is just a fucking walking Bratz doll, so they really don't have any chemistry together, and that really hurts the relationship between Susan and Reed, and that's supposed to be one of the strongest things there is for the team of the Fantastic Four, and it's just not really on as strong as it should be. And then Doom is just kind of lame. It's just Norman Osborn the second, doesn't have that much to do. Julian McMahon, and the whole idea of him getting being fused to having metal becoming metal. I didn't mind that. That was a better origin story than was before. He gets scars his face, and so he decides to make it worse by putting a red hot metal mask on his face. But it was there. I mean, his motivation. I mean, it was revenge, but really it was his fault. He was the one that locked everyone out of the space station. He closed the shields. They got exposed to the cosmic energy, but he got exposed to the cosmic energy as well. But he got exposed to the cosmic energy through the shields, which is what he ultimately was transforming into, is a combination of the shields with the cosmic energy. So, that's his fault, really. And he doesn't have anyone to blame except himself. Also for not listening to Reed when he's telling him we need to close the shields, we need to do all this, the storm is coming faster than usual. Which then I always thought that was kind of like, why was why were his calculations that off? Seems like a pretty bad screenplay, to be honest, written by Michael France and Mark Frost. So yeah, I was just like, why was his calculations that off? And I got a really bad Lost in Space with movie William Hurt vibe in the beginning. I don't know if I'm the only one. It just got that vibe, and that just wasn't good. But anyway, I would definitely say I like this more than Lost in Space. But it's not saying much. It's very faint praise. But yeah, I mean, there are some pros. I do like Michael Chiklis' performance as the Thing. I thought he was good. Johnny Storm had some fun, lines of dialogue. Didn't mind. It was kind of fun. At least Chris Evans was having fun with the role, which was definitely went a long way for me. Jessica Alba was hot, but she can't act, so I thought she was miscast. The performance is pretty awful, to be honest. Ioan Gruffudd was there, and Julian McMahon I just thought was miscast as Doctor Doom at the end of the day. And there wasn't really much for his character to do except just be, hey, Be like be like Green Goblin and Spider-Man. It was like, but he's Doctor Doom. Yeah, well, we wanted to be more like Green Goblin. And I'm like, people like Green Goblin, so let's make him more like Norman Osborn. I'm like, he's not Norman Osborn. And I just didn't like that at all. And the score by John Ottoman wasn't much. At points, it felt out of place, especially in the climax. It sounded like it belonged in an episode of the '60s Batman TV series with its da-da-da, sort of strings and stuff like that. And the effects, the look of the thing was all right. Some of the shots of Mr. Fantastic were okay for 2005, but when Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, not that great. But that it's a 2005 film, CGI 2005, I guess. 10 years comes a long way, but still the fire effects on of Johnny Storm in 2015 film were a little bit better, but they still don't look right because CGI still can't make. There still is no such thing as realistic looking CGI fire, and there's no way they were going to light a stuntman on fire and have him run around or fly. So that's the only way you can make a realistic looking Human Torch. So to this day, it's just you're not gonna. It's just it doesn't look very good because it's just CGI flames just don't look like shit. And so yeah, for the effects for the most part were okay for the time period. And so yeah, but there's just not a lot of action there's not a lot of action in it, and there's the bridge sequence. There's a little bit near the end, but it's nothing that's really fantastic or really that memorable. And at the end of the day, it's okay. It's a decent time waster for me because of some of the cast members, Michael Chiklis, Chris Evans, and Ioan Gruffudd is all right. And that's about it though. I mean, there's a lot of moments where they just don't do anything. They're just sitting around in the Baxter building trying to find a way to get rid of their powers. And Johnny Storm's playing pranks on the Thing with the whole shaving cream trick. Tickle him and smack his face with shaving cream, which I've seen done better and funnier in D2 The Mighty Ducks. But, other than that, I mean, that's really about it. I mean, there's some fun little bits of humor here and there. There's a little bit of action that's all right. But for the most part, it's just there. There's nothing that's insultingly awful that makes you pissed off and angry, but it's nothing really that fantastic either. But anyway, I really don't know what else to say about Fantastic Four, the 2005 film, other than I think better writing and a much better director and a little bit more action would have definitely went a long way in this film's favor. But the way it is, it's all right. It's harmless, passable entertainment. So I really don't know what else to say except if I rate it out of 5 stars, I give it 3 out of 5. It's an average film for me. It's an average, passable superhero comic book flick that I can watch as a time waster, but that's about it. But anyway, thank you for watching my review of Fantastic Four, the 2005 film, and I will see you guys later. See ya.